explain.
My only question isn't the same one that I've asked before, with really specifically it goes against Erie County. And I wish Kevin was here so we could
I wish he
get it,
was.
because as I said in the meeting, the town board meeting, and I'm going to continue to state here, the overall real property assessment levy brought in by Erie County in the last 10 years has been $225 million. It increases exponentially every year. And I want guarantee, I'd like some guarantee to be to every other property owner on Grand Island specifically, that if we double the total value of our property to go into the assessment pool, which is how they base the levy percentage out, we are not going to pick up a larger share of the exponential growth of the cost of Erie County. I don't believe, as I said before, there's not the levy for this town is minimal. This is not the concern for me. My bigger concern is for the money being drawn out of here, go to Erie County, and that if we double the value in a manner of speaking, that pool becomes our pie, our slice of the same piece of pie gets bigger. So I'd like it guaranteed from somebody that says, hey, you know what, Grand Island residents, you're not going to get stuck with it.
And we have that, I mean, this is a lengthy thing from Kevin Hardwick and Joe saying, in summary, as you can see by the Grand Island and Elma examples, and I summarized those for you earlier, the equalization process creates a level playing field for all towns that are not at full value.
When we are at full value, then what?
The equalization rate is no more, you're 100% and that's it, and our percentage is supposed to stay the same. But I will do my best to get Kevin to put that in a column or do something, but we have been assured that that is there, because, and when you really think about it, and I was thinking about this on December 12th, as we were fielding the questions, and all of us were kind of unsure, but I'm thinking, why would anyone ever do a rebate? You never would, if that were the case. And many towns have, and have done it well.
That comment comes from Erie County Director of Real Property Services, so it's Kevin, and it holds true. And if it doesn't, then we all have bigger problems that we need to take care of.
So just to further explain, because one of the slides I did show, but I know it was a lot of information, was how that equalization value is used. And Mary mentioned that Elma is actually at 4.68%. So, but the reason why they're at 4.68% is they do their taxes in hundreds, not thousands of dollars. So that's part of it. So it's per 100, there's a whole bunch. But anyways, a property that's worth $150,000 in theory, as long as their equalization rate is, which would actually be equivalent to 40, so it's 48.5, 4.85, which would be cost 48.5. They're gonna, when Erie County receives their assessment total pool of value, they take that 4.85 and divide it and increase. And that's what the equalization is used for. So Grand Island's number that we give them, they divide it by 4.8 or 46.5, which then inflates the number by 115% for Grand Island, but they do that with every property. So that puts, in theory, the pool of Grand Island properties to 100%. And then they spread the taxes over that. So just in terms of what Kevin did provide us as information. Now, the key to that is, provided that that assumption, which New York State has professionals that do come up with these values of 46.5, I would expect that they're experts, and I know that Mary mentioned that they have a solution. The people that are doing the RFPs and everything, they know that no one would ever proceed forwards with doing this if it wasn't neutral to that municipality. They would not volunteer their municipality for a tax increase to Erie County. That'd be counterproductive. So they know how to manage that. So I would expect at the end, when the singing stops and everyone has to take a seat, the full market value would almost have to be 115% above what your current assessed value is, which means that 6 one way, half a dozen the other, it should have no impact on the levy against Grand Island. Now, when they do the RFP, they need to really make sure that they got that base covered. So that's the key, is knowing that when the music stops, it's 115% the full market value relative to what's been reported in 2011 and 2012. Sorry, I got a person here. Just.
Mike Zolkowski. Good to see you guys. Happy New Year. What's the process for adding new properties? I had the occasion at the end of the month to look at all the cell towers on Grand Island and see what their tax assessment was, and I saw that Verizon's tower on Long Road is not on the tax rolls yet. And kind of related to that, what about properties that are in default of their tax? You know, I saw the cell tower here on Carl Road, they haven't paid their tax bill.
The taxes go to the county, so that the county pays our share and end up owing the county. So that is a, you know, we and the town ends up whole, but your county doesn't. So, you know, as your county taxpayers, we're handling that. But there's legal processes, and that's all, I mean, that's nothing we control at the town level. But that is, there are processes for that. And I believe adding new parcels for the tax roll or new items is a scheduled thing. And I'm making that question for Judy, but we can get back to you about that. I think it's all a matter of if you get, and people here who have built know that if you finish or if you know, if you sell or whatever before a certain date, and I'm sorry that I don't know those dates, it's changed in the last little bit, Chuck, I don't know if you know those dates, the dates of the rolls. I don't know those ones, but it's all tied to the calendar. We can get you those. That would be a Judy question.
So a property, for example, that convenience store at Ransom and Stony Brook,
Correct.
that's not on the books yet.
No, it's not on the books yet, and when it goes on the books, it'll be determined when it's finished, and I don't know what the due date is that the assessor has to work with, but that's all related to the calendar.
And when you finish the project, you see it all.
Right, and the final inspection.
Inspection, so the cell tower may not have been finally inspected until at the end of the year.
So this could go on for decades.
No. We're done within that calendar year, as Mary said. What's the?
Well, if they're finished though.
What's the challenge date? It's in March.
Yeah.
So it's got to be done before March. You know, it's got to be on before March. So you've got before the first of this, you can get that money and add it, or so you can make the challenge.
What's the process? Are you constantly reevaluating the commercials?
Yes.
Is that all part of this process?
Former assessor Dave Unmack did a bunch of those, and we also, unfortunately, get a lot of challenges corporately by most of the corporations on Grand Island.
So that's the key, is really to lawyer up?
That's
Well,
what occurs. And then the town and the school get together, and our town attorneys take the lead role on this, and negotiations happen, and assessments are either increased or reduced or stay the same.
But, and that line, the only way right now that we have to do commercials is through that process. Just like the only way we have to do residentials is if you sell or if you do something that requires a building permit. So when you say they're constantly being reassessed, well, they are if they're being challenged. But otherwise, we don't have a mechanism. This would do that. When we do the revale project, every parcel gets done.
So you're going to every commercial every year and asking them for the revenue?
No. We are, right now, the only way that commercials are being handled is a similar process to the way the residentials are, when there's some issue, when there's a challenge. And often it's an attorney, they make their rounds, and Grand Island gets hit pretty cyclically. Somebody will come into town, talk to a few businesses, we'll get the papers, and then we defend those.
It's a lawsuit that they give to us, and we move forward from there.
So you don't proactively go out and try to reassess them, you reactively
We can't.
shoot.
Just like we can't proactively go out and reassess residential properties. The only way you have to do that is if somebody purchases or if somebody does something that requires a building permit.
It's almost like spot zoning. You couldn't just go out
You
to your
can't.
house and then come to my house and then go to Joe's house. And
Well, my experience recently with the zoning code and the long-range plan is that it's useless. And it means nothing. Judge Morgan. Thank you very much. How about IDA projects where you have a pilot paying in lieu of taxes? Do we have any of those on Grand Island?
We do.
So we've got people that aren't paying taxes or are paying half. of
Okay,
it.
well, I wouldn't say half, they're paying a percentage, and all that information is available. You can get those lists from the assessor. We have several properties that are under payment in lieu of taxes, pilot programs.
So is there something we can do to block those?
You could certainly go to the
Or
county.
I mean,
well, there can be negative voices of opinion.
There's public hearings before those are granted. But I mean, yeah, if you're interested in that, you can first find out the properties that are under those current restrictions, and then, decide if you want to do something about it. You're welcome. And we'll get you that information about adding new parcels and then parcels that are not paying their taxes current. That's what you wanted to know, right?
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, okay.
After the reassessment is done, and let's take, for example, you have two houses. One house is assessed at $300,000, and another house is assessed at $150,000. Does the house that's assessed at $300,000 pay twice as much taxes as the one $150,000?
I would say yes. That's exactly what we have.
And
Yes.
that's the purpose of this whole thing.
That is the purpose of this whole thing. The equitable distribution of the levy across all the properties.
And just to further answer that example I put up on the board where there's two properties right now from 1986 that were originally assessed at $100,000 and $125,000, that today both are worth $250,000. Based on what I looked at research-wise, this example exists on Grand Island right now. The one property owner who has the same property, similar property that's equivalently market value is paying 25% more taxes. And in the example I showed, it would have been $1,400. Actually, that was a different, no, it was at $57. So in that case, two people that had the exact same market value, assessed last in 1986, one's paying $1,400 more than the other. The real value is probably somewhere in between. Probably, $700 down, and the other person has to go $700 up. So in that case, one person's going to go up, one person's going to go down. That example probably does exist on Grand Island.
You mentioned the value of properties, sales. What impact does that have on the whole reassessment process? I mean, how is that taken into account when they're doing a reassessment?
My understanding is that it's comparable sales, so something that is a comparable house, and yeah, there's an art to this and it's subjective, but the grievance process would allow you, if you thought your property was misassessed because of some extenuating circumstance, you would certainly be allowed to come in and argue your point about whatever it would happen to be. You could bring your own comparables in, or talk about what extenuating circumstance might exist in your home, like in the house I mentioned today that has this big basement issue, that type of thing. And right now, we have a grievance day. The Board of Assessment Review will look at anyone who wants to challenge their assessment. In the process of this revale, there are some points built in along the way where my understanding is there'll be a assessed value for homes, and it won't be all the way to the grievance day. It'll be an intermediate time frame where if you think there's something that the contractor missed or that the assessor missed regarding your home, that in most cases, I'm assuming people are going to want to lower their assessment. That would be, I can't imagine too many people running in saying, please increase. But, so we'll use that. I mean, if you think, oh my goodness, they have my house at $250,000 and for these reasons, I know for sure it's not, then you would have the opportunity to bring those in and to talk about that.
Before it went on the tax?
Yes, before it goes on the tax roll. It is my understanding that there are several points along the way of the process, and Mr. Buchanan's been through this, he knows it better than I, that's built into the contractor arrangement, because the last thing our town board wants to do is have everything be final and your only redress to come to the Board of Assessment Review. We'd be there for months. And that's not, there's things that can get cleared up ahead of time. And again, the example that I'll give you, the man who showed up today, his address is already flagged. His will already get looked at. It won't even get to that first phase because he's already identified the problem that he thinks there's going to be. So we're hoping to have many steps along the way where such questions as the one we brought up could be handled in an equitable manner, and you would have the opportunity then to state your case. And it's all based on market value and equitable, comparable is the word, comparable sales. And that's why when you talk to the assessor, she'll talk to you about families assuming ownership of homes through deaths and things like that. They don't even use those as comparable sales. They call them, you have to have, I believe it's an arm's length sale between two people of sound mind and blah, 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 because they want to get something that is actually a market value as opposed to you just, Ann Millie died and you got her house for a steal and it's on the river, but oh well. And then driving everything in a certain direction. We want them to be fair market sales.
So what about outliers? You mentioned the low-end outliers.
Right.
How about the high-end outliers, where someone came in from
Right.
California and thought, wow, $600,000 for what we'd only pay $400 for. What a deal.
Again, it's my understanding that those are kind of, as you just called them, they're outliners. They're out here. Yeah, they happen, but that's not the general run-of-the-mill sale that's going to be used in a revale to establish assessment.
Take the meat.
Excuse me?
Take the meat.
Yes, exactly. And
I can answer several of the questions. That outlayer, no one sale makes a market. So you might have one that's way out here, that's just disregarded, and it's coming in with 3 and 4 and 5 sales that makes your market or more. With the young lady back there with her question, let's say you had a structural or a condition problem. When you do your grievance, bring in a picture or a video of it. That is excellent to do that. I've done that many times. I've had many people bring it to me when I was on the Amherst Review Board, and the assessor didn't know about the condition or severity, and the picture cleared it up right away. So that will, I encourage you, take a picture, take a video and bring it in. That's what you should do. And in regards to the gentleman over here with the Erie County assessment, Amherst went through a revale about 4 years ago. We went from 92% up to 100. And if the properties were properly assessed, some of the county taxes actually went down a few dollars because the equalization rate by the county is based on data that is about 2 years old. So in some cases, the county taxes on the properties actually went down a few dollars. So there wasn't a spike, so there's no fear of that. It is an equitable formula for the county taxes when you go from 46.5 up to 100%. If it's assessed properly, you should see absolutely no increase in the county tax. Will mistakes be made? Oh, definitely so. The assessment is not an exact science, and mistakes are made. And you have several steps to challenge it. The first one is with your assessment review board, which is the third Tuesday in May, or June. In June, and then you have the assessment through the small claims, which is also something you can do by yourself. So there are several steps that you can personally take to challenge your assessment and get your assessment reduced. So you have a lot of safety nets.
You mentioned about if you want, you can agree your assessment. If it is still illegal on 4 cases, 4 ways you can assess a house and 4 ways you can argue it, why is the town of Grand Island Assessment Board still doing it? We moved in Grand Island in January 1990. We got a tax bill. We went to the grievance in July 1990. Our house went from $64,500 to $77,000. The fellow told me at the time, well, we're getting ready to do a reevaluation on Grand Island. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. It's okay. At the end of that meeting, they gave us $5,000 off. That was not good enough for my wife and I. We went around and took pictures of 15 properties, went to the town board, got the lot size, everything else, and what they paid. We then went to the Bureau of Equalization and Assessment at the State Ed work, and I met a man, first time in politics, but a man that actually knew what he was talking about. It's called, one of the 4 things is the Welcome Stranger Law. And simply because I moved into Colonial Drive as a newbie, why should I pay more money than everyone who's lived there all the time? Well, that's what I won my case on.
You should.
I did win it.
You should have won. I
Yeah.
mean, you shouldn't pay.
Should not have paid more. Now, I have to believe, Mary, and Dick, that this is still going on in New York State. People are moving into a variety of communities thinking that, oh, I bought a new house, I paid more than the people before, so I should pay more tax. That's wrong. So to fight the assessment, that doesn't make sense to me. You people should know not to do it to begin with.
I wish I had known that 6 years ago. That was good information. I'll make sure that I'm going to put out meeting minutes. I'll make sure I'll reference that and a link for that.
I'd like practical questions. How many homes are there on Grand Island that we do the reassessment?
Well, I can do it in terms of parcels, around 9,000.
Okay.
And we have about 8,000 some water bills, so that kind of tells you where our house
No, I
is.
understand. What I'm asking is, what you're doing, you, us, are going out for bids for contractors to bring people in to do the assessment.
All right.
And how many people will there be?
We don't know that. That's one of the reasons.
You know what I'm after, you've got 9 people, that's 1,000 homes for each person. Okay, that leads me to the next question. You said something about driving past the house. I mean, this evaluation is like the National Fuel Guy reading meters for this?
Well, no, it starts with the sheet that you received in the summer, and as this gentleman asked, you know, he didn't get one, so how does he get one? So if he didn't fill that out, that was the start of it. Some field work has already been done. The assessor's been around to some neighborhoods. I don't know which ones. You can call and ask her to see if yours was part of that. So there's preliminary work. You might want to come in and see what the town file shows for your property right now. That's all the start of it. I know that the contractor will generally not go into homes. It's based on square footage, number of bedrooms, etc. But so from that angle, it is kind of a at the road type of thing or at the right of way type of thing. But theoretically, there will be a lot of exact things that are characteristic for your property that are already in the file that will help them. But as Mr. Buchanan said, there will be some mistakes. It really is dependent on everybody knowing what it says about your property. We got a ton of those sheets back. Very high response rate. Mine for my house said that we had, I forget, I think, I don't know, an extra room, or we had a wood burning something that we don't have or whatever. But I mean, little things like that were pretty common. But then some people were concerned because theirs had very, very different things, central air, and they didn't have it. But a lot of that stuff was inside only, and they're dealing with footprints.
Yeah, what I'm concerned with, because it has happened to me, I'm sure it's happened to others. In the sheet that I got, I'm not sure I filled it out or not, because I looked at it and said, oh, yeah, finger to the wind, that's about right.
Right, so you didn't.
And why rock the boat? Why have people sniffing around it? Because I had it happen once, and they raised everybody's taxes in the whole neighborhood. I did what this fellow said here. He went around and took pictures and so forth, and so, well, they got a better deal. People that raised them, that made me real popular. But
well, if you're wondering what's on file for your property, call and ask, and I'll tell you.
Because if you've got part of your house on a slab, and they say there's a basement underneath it,
that would be yeah. Right.
My home has a 2-story ceiling or living room, and what they said was, they've got that square footage upstairs, but there isn't enough.
Right. That would be, especially square footage stuff, things about basements, those would be pretty critical to get.
Now, I'm going to go up to Judy and see what's on file.
Do that.
Finally here, what the rent is the reevaluation. Are you attempting to come up with an FMV, fair market value? Is that?
Yeah.
Instead of having 2 different numbers.
Exactly, you have 100%, yes.
The 2 will try to make be the same.
Yes, that's the goal.
Great.
Next question.
Actually, you already answered it. I wanted to know if the assessors would request coming into your home.
Generally, they will not, but certainly, again, on the case of the man who came in today, he was actually inviting them. Excellent idea to make a videotape or take some photographs. That might be a good way to handle that if you don't really want, people in the house. But no, they have no authority to come in your house. You should not allow, don't think that someone flashing some card or saying, I'm the assessor contractor, I'm coming into your house. No, that is not part of their job. They should not be doing that. And so don't fall for that, because that's probably somebody scamming that.
And if they do, let us know, please.
Exactly, because that's a real issue.
Okay, this is a statement rather than a question. First of all, I got a few things to say. Nowhere on this list does it say anything about Erie County's part. There's just New York State mandate programs. Okay.
I think that, Dean, the county does that, and they started this a few years ago. Some people may remember this and be able to speak to it better than I can, but a while ago, when the county wanted to show that every bit of our county tax went to pay for state Medicaid, they decided to print that on the bills that way. So it's got to be collected by the county, and the county's trying to inform taxpayers, if you will, that every penny of that has to go to pay for the state mandates that the county has no control over, but are forced to pay for. So I think that's why it reads like that.
Okay, because I also, 3 years ago, I bought a property in Cattaraugus County. Okay, at the time, the property was assessed for $1,200. The rate was $1,100 per $1,200. So do the math, my taxes were $1,400 a year. Okay, I'm just using this as an example to show you what happens. Now, last year, they went to full market value. My taxes went down $100. I'm happy. This year, because of Medicaid in the county, they went up another $100. So I'm where I was with my property at full market value, where my property was when it was worth $1,200. Okay. Now here's some interesting thing on Grand Island. I did a few hours of research. There's approximately 8,100 homes, depending on which website you go to. There's 2.64 people per house. 2010 population was 20,482. 70% of the people have bought houses since 1999. So really, like Mike said, this is going to affect 30% of the people that have been here longer than, you know, or the 30%. Okay, I did a little math. Since 1999, or since 1990, we've got 2,986 new people coming in. That's approximately 1,131 more homes. When you're looking at 2.64 people per home, I found a thing here from 1996 to present. That's about 1,200. So that doesn't include the other whatever since 1986. My point is, let's say we use 1,000 new homes, and we all know what the new homes are going for. They're 200,000 plus. But let's just use 200,000, because I know the tax rate on 200,000 is about $5,500 a year. That's $5.5 million in windfall. Okay, because what we're forgetting to look at is the revenue side of this. The levy is some one thing, okay, but then, and your tax rate's another, but you've got revenue in between. And that slice of bread over the past 20 years has become a hoagie loaf. Okay? Now, so we're looking at about 50 houses a year. You look at approximately 4% of the houses on the island are sold per year. That's between 250 to 300 houses a year. So minus your 50 houses, I said 200. And let's say those guys go up by $1,000 a year. That's another $4 million a year. So we're looking at $9 million a year windfall compared to 20 years ago. Minimum is probably closer to 15 to 20 million.
But again, that's assessed value.
No, I'm talking about if you got a house that wasn't here last year, and they're paying
okay, I got
$5,000 a
you.
year
Okay,
over the past 20 years.
But again, the levy, theoretically, that should be helping lower everybody,
Exactly.
unless the levy is going out of sight. Because
It's Reaganomics. It's pure Reaganomics. Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations. As long as you have growth, okay, any increases, do it. Now I know.
But the levy is separate from property. The total property value is over here.
The levy's over here. So if this goes up 10%, this didn't go up 10%. The levy's still what it is. It just gets spread over this increment of 10%.
Right.
So in theory, the
Taxes should have gone down 10%. That's why sometimes
They've done
I know, well, there's never been a tax cap, so that's actually a good thing. You want it to go down, not up 2%.
Right. Growth is following the growth of our tax rates.
yes, it has.
Okay? And what I'm asking you guys as a board, since most of our taxes is state and county, you guys have to figure out, and I figured out what to do. You know, the first thing to do, and I'll tell you guys about it in private, but we got to figure out how to put pressure on our governments to keep us from becoming Detroit, because at some point, people are just going to say, I'm going to go to Idaho.
That's why we're here. That's why we're here. That's what, we need more towns to do this type of a meeting and then pressure Albany. For instance, Mary mentioned the state portion, which is over 90% of your county tax. And just to give you a feel, $1 for a $150,000 house, obviously it'd be, sorry, it's, I think it is $1,500, but regardless of the math, it's over $1,000. So for a $150,000 house, well, you just multiply 150 times $12 of value. But, sorry, I'm garbling my words, I apologize. Back on the state part of it. That $12, most of it is the Medicare, Medicaid piece of it, and we're paying double what Texas by itself or California is paying, both of which have a larger population. And in terms of that, if you take Texas and California combined, we pay the same amount. So I mean, the amount we're paying right now, Medicaid has a cafeteria style. There's like 21 checks you can decide on. I believe we do, and don't quote me on the exact number, but how many checks? We do 90, a majority of those checks. That results in us literally paying double what any other state pays per capita. That's where we're getting hammered. And what the end result is for New York State is, Erie County, I should say, is the 6th highest tax, and I know I think I said 5 last time, sorry. So the 6th highest tax out of 792 counties. Niagara County is number 3, Chautauqua County is number 5, number 5, I believe. So I mean, 9 of the 10 highest tax counties out of 792 are in New York State, and you know all the top ones are in the top. All the top 10% are part of New York State as well. So I mean, we pay way more than what we should. If we just go to the liberal Medicaid program that California has, which is very generous, it's been stated that it would be a savings of about $20 billion. Our total New York State tax rate, the government runs on about $134 billion, and 54 plus, maybe between 54 and 60 billion of that is just this piece of it. If we can get that piece cut down from between 54 and 60 billion, down to 25 billion or $20 billion less, take 20 of it or 10 of it, put it towards that, take the other 10, put it towards tax reduction, it's a fairly significant reduction in your property taxes. We need this town, other the top nine towns in New York State, where I think there is a platform, and we need to approach Albany and try and reduce it. So that's one of the projects that we're working on through Team New York and Team Watch, etc. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
I was just listening to what you said about our county tax is $12. Our county tax is $12 out of how much?
57 total. So $39 is school, 6 is town.
So we're talking about $12 out of the 57. Our real tax here is our school tax. That's the major burden that we got. It's our school tax. Yes, you're right. We should pull state taxes down, but you need to put this in perspective. We are paying $10 to New York State for almost 3%. We are paying $39 for our own schools right here on Grand Island.
And you know, I think one of the things, and I agree absolutely, I validate everything you just said. One of the things you got to consider is where you pick your battle and where you're most likely to gain a win. I think we have a platform for the Medicaid piece of it relative to what California is doing. So we wouldn't be necessarily attacked to say that we should go to a program similar to California. I think we could have a win there relatively quickly. Clearly, the school tax, with whatever is going into all that, you know, whether it's the pay benefits, things of that nature, you know, there's a number of things that go into that. I think that's a much harder fight, and you gotta try and win in, you know, every dollar less that we're paying per thousand, you know, a dollar less per 1,000 is a fairly substantial savings. So if we can cut that, you know, by 10% or whatever, but yes, I agree. Thanks. Dana here.
I moved in about 7 years ago, so my value of my home 7 years ago should be pretty much the same. Now,
certainly
I
isn't
should-
going to be as dramatic
It's
as
dramatic, yeah.
since 1986.
Yeah, because again, the people that have been here for that much longer, they obviously going to get more. But what if we look at my home 7 years ago when I moved in and bought, that it was way under. Then like, and the tax assessor is in charge of making, making that decision, correct?
Correct.
And
And not doing what Mr. Loss brought up about the stranger, the new person.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's a subjective thing that they've got to do.
Okay, because there's a lot of neighborhoods on the island that you might have in the whole neighborhood the same sort of style of homes.
Right.
Older neighborhoods, newer neighborhoods when they're building, through 2, 3, 3,500 square foot homes in these newer developments. All right, I live in an area where my house is 2,000 square feet. The house next door to me is 5,000 square feet. The house down the street is 7,000 square feet. There's a house 2 doors from me that's 1,500 square feet. I've had sales on my street. My neighbor's house has been on the market for $500,000 for 2 years now, a year and a half. Hasn't been sold. 10 doors down the road, on the water side, and on the other side, the water side house just sold for $359,000. A house down the street from us, 20 houses down, 2 houses on one property on a thin lot, sold for $210,000. So it's all over the board.
It is, and the idea here is to get it to be more equitable, to have, and when you say, I mean, sometimes comparable sales can be close to you, but they don't have to be. In your particular instance, you might not find an appropriate comparable sale until a half mile out, just from what you said.
So that's what you look at. You can't go.
Oh, absolutely, it's not geography. No. It's comparable, and if it's waterfront, then you go to try to find something else on the water. I know from talking to Judy, East River is very different than West River. You'll get people who don't know the area, and they'll think waterfront equals waterfront. Well, it's very different, as everyone in this room knows, how close you are. Like you already mentioned, you're not on the water side, people are. So all of that kind of stuff factors in, and that would help determine what a comparable sale actually is.
People, like right now, people when they're selling houses on that road, if you live on the water, not across the street from the road, your house is worth more than that across the street.
For the convenience.
Sure. And, I heard a thing in the last meeting that somebody made a statement that if you're on East River Road, anything's $400,000 and up.
No.
I mean, you just can't.
No, you cannot say such things.
Yeah.
Just like you, and everybody here knows, I mean, there are some little tiny cottages that have never been made into homes yet. They're still little cottages. And those still exist. I mean, in some time they won't, but they do now. And no, that was not a true statement at all.
Okay. And just a viewpoint of what's happened also on the island with the capital project, that the voting, or how it came out with it being passed this year. 20,000 people on the island. And, just picking a number, there's 15,000 registered voters.
There's about 14,000 registered voters. You're right on target.
14,000. 1,900 people showed up to vote for that project. And a great majority of those people were young kids who don't pay taxes. So people who...
It was 4 days before the rest.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying. Yeah,
Number one, if that election was made to be held on November 3rd, when all the other elections are, you'd get a much better representation of the island.
Yes, you have a very good point.
There's another one coming up in May. For sure, it's going to be just before Labor Day when everybody's camping.
Well, it's amazing on the poor turnout, and you have a very good point on that. But also, a lot of the people who pay the taxes didn't get out to do that, and they could have done absentee ballots and all that too. But a lot of times people just go, well, it doesn't concern me. My kids don't go to school; they don't even go vote. But it does affect everyone.
It affects everyone who's paying taxes.
And there's certain things that the schools do need, but yes, they approved the tax increase, and now our taxes are going to go up even higher at $39.
And Dana brings up a good point about the power of the vote. I mean, we're coming up to a presidential election year, and we'll probably be lucky on the island if we hit 60% of our registered voters going to vote. That will be probably headline news. This last time around in the 2011 general election, I think we're at like 42%. So imagine if, as he said, if, you know, we've got 14,000 registered voters. If, my goodness, if 10,000 of them showed up, imagine the power of it. Huge power in the vote, but you have to go. You have to show up. And that's a message that all of you can take to 10 of your closest friends and relatives and urge them to pay attention, and it does affect everybody. Good point.
And last thing is, I know you mentioned before, it's the responsibility of the town board to have this done.
Right.
Okay, and we haven't had it done in 26 years. What happened with the other town boards and the other people in charge of why we haven't had it done this long?
I think they were negligent, and I was part of some of those town boards. And here's one of the big issues. You can't have a town board that disagrees, because this is going to be hard, and it's going to create controversy, and you have to go into it committed to the process. And until recently, we've always had 1 or 2 town board members who said, I'm not supporting that. And you can't do that, because it's going to be hard enough when there's a full town board committed to working through the process, making sure that you're putting in the time, because it's going to take a lot of extra time and effort, and we haven't had that. So now we have had, as Dick said, for a while, and that's why the process started in summer, that's why the money was put in the budget, and there's still, I mean, you know, there's still concern, but we need to get it done. It's not a glamorous project and it's not fun, but it needs to happen to make our town equitable.
When will our new assessment be given to us? When will we know the increase or decrease? When will we know that?
Well, it goes into effect 2013, so by the end of, sometime in 2012, I'm sure that, we don't know yet, because we haven't gotten the full RFP.
Will be sent to you in the mail when you get it?
I believe it will. There'll be notification, and as I referred to before, there'll be steps along the way where you'll get to see that and see what you think about it, and then processes before it's a full-blown challenge to your assessment. There'll be steps along the way where homeowner or property owners can look at that and say, oh, all right, this is reasonable, or oh, I have much evidence that they need to hear from me, and then you'll have a chance to get there.
And there's steps that will also continue to happen like this, once we finalize an RFP with a contractor, there will be continued meetings to let the island residents know as to what's going on. So, you know, we might do one across the island. Do you want to hear again? Do you want to Sidway? Do you want to do Road? And just make sure that we cover the whole island and people are well aware of what the process is.
Is there a snapshot that they have, whoever's doing this reassessment, if you will, in terms of what time they use in the market? Because it's very subjective in terms of when you pick. Yes. Right now, nationally, as well as locally, real estate is on the slide. So is there disclosure by the board, as well as these individuals, as to when that's done?
Yes, and that's the one thing Judy will tell you when you go to ask her to give you a picture of what's going to happen to you. That when she did it for me, that's what she said. Here's the one thing I don't know, what values are going to be at that time. It's going to be a calendar time, and that's going to have to be dealt with. I don't know what the market's going to look like in.
But that's disclosed, just the same.
Oh, absolutely disclosed, absolutely.
We're not going to go back 10 years, but it might be within the last 2 years.
Well, why not current?
I think it's going to be current. No, I think it is.
It's going to be current, but every neighborhood, it won't be current on every neighborhood, in every year. It'll be, because you've got to take that whole.
But if you're reassessing, you should use the current market.
I believe that.
Yes. The assessor, along with the people who
contractor,
will pick a date. It will probably be, I'll give you an example, 100% value as of December 1st, 2012. That'll be the date. So all properties will be 100% as of that date. It may not be that date, but it will be a date relatively close to sometime at the end of the year. It could be a month or so either way, but we will be exact date that they pick the 100% value as of.
I'm not referring to the date. I'm saying, when do they look at the market evaluations of your property?
Oh, well, okay.
In the context of East River is worth X, and
they pick a date and either bring it up or back to a certain date. It has to be ends up at a certain date.
Right.
And the house
so
selling
3 years ago, it's a 20% variance.
Well, but they won't go that far back, because in
But that date would
Right
also,
now, but that period's disclosed.
Yeah, oh yeah.
yeah, you'll know.
It has, by law, it has to be disclosed.
And then that date would also be true for the entire island. It wouldn't be,
It's not by neighborhood.
no, that, and then again though, if you felt that there was some extenuating circumstance with your property related to that date, you would present that and say, well, here's some reasons why that date didn't work for me, you need to know this, and that would be part of the process. But it will be one date for the whole island.
Kathy, you got anything with it? I know someone's dying to ask another question or two.
I don't want to microphone, just a really quick one, Mike. If this whole process isn't mandated by the state, why aren't we bringing this process to a vote? Why aren't we voting on whether or not the town should have a rebalancing?
Because it's the town board's responsibility to do it, and we're, like many other things, Sherry, it's one of the things we're charged to do. We're charged to equitably handle the taxes for our town. And it's one of the many things we have to do. I mean, once in a while we have a vote. I think the last referendum was over the sports complex at Betts Park, maybe, because I think that was it, maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s maybe. But that's the job of an elected official. That's why we have a representative republic as opposed to a pure democracy, because we're charged with doing it. And that's one of the chores that we have to take on.
Okay, because end of the night, I've got another good one. We started with the school tax. My brother lives in Potomac, Maryland, and for those of you that don't know, Potomac, Maryland has the #1 school district in the country. His taxes, his school taxes, are less than mine, and his house is worth 4 times as much. What can we do to at least get our system to be the #1 school district in Western New York?
Well, what we have to do, that's a county-run municipality. The school districts are run by the county, so we'd have to change our whole system, which has been brought up with consolidation and stuff, but to start, that's where they start. Everything is run by the county. They run the school districts, they run the towns. You know, we talk about the governance that we have and the levels that we have. Pardon me?
If it's run by the county, why do we need a superintendent?
Well, that's not, I don't have the answer to that question.
They probably have one superintendent for many districts in that area of Maryland. That's what a lot of states do, or counties.
Oh, you're talking about Maryland? Yeah, there's one school system.
Right.
County school system, one superintendent instead of 45, yeah.
I think the regional talks in that are going to have to continue to be looked at, because if we stay under the current with the Medicaid stuff, we're going to be taxed so high that people are going to just continue. So what are the other ways to do it? You know, I mean, look at the police force that we have.
Will become Greece.
Right.
Yes.
Right. You know,
And it's a matter of what you want. I mean, you want to put your money into services, social services, schools. I mean, we can't have it all, and it's showing because we don't have enough money and people are leaving. But it's a matter of choices and what services you want to pay for.
we have done a lot of consolidation in our town, and as a town board, we're going to continue. We continue to look at that every day, how we can continue to maintain the level of services that we currently provide today, and how we're going to do that. And we brought up a couple of slides on the tax cap. Let me tell you, it was very difficult when we sat down this year of staying within that 2%, but we did it. And we're going to continue to look at that, to do that every year, because that is our goal, not only as elected officials, but residents of this community. And the services that you enjoy and we enjoy, they cost something. And we have to continue to work better, to work smarter, and we continue to send that message home every day when we work with our department heads in town. And we need to continue to keep hearing from people like you that show up to these meetings, and continue to make smarter decisions and better decisions.
Rhode Island is not the tax problem. New York State
Yeah.
is terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely brutal. More layers and overlapping and duplication. It's people aren't moving out of Grand Island. They're moving out of New York State.
Well, we balance our budget every year, and thank God we do that.
Well,
If you look at the rest of the levels of government that don't, they need to start taking the example of the lowest level of government, right in the small town, and say, hey, let's wake up, let's get smarter.
Just to note what you said, so just Erie County in the last 10 years has lost 30,000 people. New York State, New York State as a whole, since 1950, I believe it is, 45 congressional seats 50 years ago. We are going down to 27 after this year. And one thing people need to understand is, in this area, for instance, we're not losing just a person, a congressional representative. We're losing 1/3 for this area. 1 out of our 3 representatives, 1/3 of the federal dollars moves with that person to Florida or Texas. And New York State lost 2 out of 29% of their, I think it comes out to be 7 or 8% of their federal dollars went with those 2 congressional seats. We went from 45 to 27. There's a reason for that. It's not because we're undertaxed, we're overtaxed. There's a reason why all these companies, Marine Midland didn't pull any punches. It literally said, we are leaving West New York because it's not a place for locating business. Right now, it's not a friendly area to locate businesses. They're going to other locations within the United States as well as off coast, but they are relocating. They're not downsizing, they're relocating. And what's the real risk of that? If they really relocate, look at that big building in the middle of Buffalo. If they relocate out of that, that's a huge office space that may never be filled. So, we need to recognize New York State is taxed enough already. We need to freeze or drop the taxes. We need to create a business-friendly environment. Putting another $1 billion in the heart of Buffalo right now, you're not attracting businesses because that $1 billion came from somewhere and it came out of our back pockets. So it may sound great, it's a great sound bite. It's not going to help us at this point in time. And what you got to realize is, we gave you $100 billion, but what are you going to do next year and the year after? And a business model, a viable business model doesn't say, okay, I'm getting $3 million this year. It says 5 years, 10 years. What is the business environment going to be? It's not short-sighted. If it's a real business that's going to stay in Buffalo, they're going to be saying, okay, over the next 10 years, we expect to grow this much. Here's the cost benefit relative to if we locate in Texas or Florida.